Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con, Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is a very, very good brother of mine, Corey Newell, who I met through the Knights of Columbus. And I can't wait to get into his story. I've heard bits and pieces of it. But what strikes me about this gentleman more than so many others is how genuine he is and how loving he is towards his brothers and sisters in Christ. And I just look forward to, getting further and further into his story. And I also want to mention he is a performance management analyst and a federal contractor for Peraton. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
Did I get that right?
Yep.
And I'm sure we'll get into career as well. But Corey, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be here. And I
Thank you so much.
Your story.
Thank you so much, Eddie. I really appreciate the time. I've had a lot of opportunity to really reflect just on who I am as a Catholic gentleman and who I am and what built me to where I am today. And I'll just kind of start from the beginning. I will just share with you kind of my beginnings, how I was brought into the world, and I'll just kind of go through some of that. And if you need clarification, go ahead and tweak it as needed. But for the most part, I just look forward to really sharing with you and the audience today about how I got to where I am, and hopefully I'll have an impact on somebody else. And maybe even as I'm sharing it, I'll grow as a person as well. That's one thing I find, that when I do share that story, it gives me pause to look back and say, here's what I've really accomplished. And if I have one of those days where I'm feeling a little bit down, stop it with the darkness and just say you really don't have it as bad as you think you do. So thank you so much for that, Eddie.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So I'll just begin from the beginning. I was born to a very loving Catholic mother and father, Richard and Beth Newell. I was born on September 8th of 1973 at Clark Air Force Base, Philippines. I am not Filipino, but I am an Air Force brat, and I was brought into this world under loving pretenses, and I was brought in with a lot of love. And I was baptized into the Catholic faith at the base chapel, and I entered the community of the Catholic Church as a son of God. And one thing that got started off right from the beginning with my family, and my mom will support this the whole way, is we coined the phrase in my family, "Figure it out." My mom was raised in a family of 6, and she was transported almost immediately, after meeting my dad, and they got married in Hampton, Virginia, to the Philippines. That was their first duty station. And my mom was pregnant with me, and I was born September 8th. I don't remember anything about the time in the Philippines, but my mom can share stories that she says that was definitely a time when it was hard. It was hard to be there, but I think in those times, being brought into the world under sometimes maybe not the most favorable conditions prepared me for anything that would come my way in life. So after less than a year of being in the Philippines, my dad got orders, and we moved stateside to F.E. Warren Air Force Base near Cheyenne, Wyoming. We were about 2 years there, and I was brought up, like I say, in love with both my mom and my dad, even though my dad was off on deployment, or he was off, at work. He would always come home, and together as a family, just the three of us, would work very close together. There was never any other kids in my family. I'm an only child, but I'm very close to my mom and my dad, and they made sure to always include me in everything that they did. Very, very early in life, I learned the power of prayer. I learned the power to pray for others, especially family. We had prayer before meals and activities, and we had night prayer and the common Catholic prayers. I learned the Our Father and the Hail Mary and the Glory Be by heart at a very young age. I probably, when I was speaking, I could say Mom and Dad, or Mama and Dada, or what have you. Then I quickly learned my prayers, and Mom and Dad found it very, very appropriate that I was immersed my life in prayer. In Cheyenne, we immediately, since we're a smaller family, we decided to connect with other families. That was our objective, was to build relationships, and you'll hear me say that a lot through my story, friends. You'll hear me talk about how important it is for me to build relationships. and we met. One of my first forever friends was the Cook family. Jeff and Mark Cook and Lisa were the three kids, and then the mom and dad were Sue and Bruce Cook, and they're our forever friends even today. My mom called her today, and they talked about her bridge game, and that was my first time ever, in my young life. I was probably only about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years old, that I was actually left in the care of someone else that wasn't my mom or my dad. And from that, I learned to build trust. And I learned that, when my mom and dad, put me in the care of somebody else, they were to be trusted, and I felt safe there. And I had a friend that was my age that I could go through my day with. Um, Very quickly, I was aware enough that I could see volunteerism, and I can remember even at that young age, seeing my mom spending time in volunteerism in the church. My mom taught CCD to the kids. She also taught First Communion, and she cleaned the priest's house. Um,
Wow.
and my dad served as an usher, and he brought me along his side, and he would have me stand right beside him, and he would have me greet parishioners as they came in, and I would collect and count the money with him. And together I just learned how, what the man's role was. And um, it was so nice to be able to have my dad there and as a leader. And he set my foundation as what it means to be a Catholic gentleman, but he also as a leader of a family. My dad knew presence was going to be the number one thing. He knew that, you know you don't join the Air Force to get rich. You join the Air Force because you want to serve, and you want to make a difference in your country. And I saw that in my dad, and I knew that he came home some nights, after 12 or 13, 14 hours of being either on deployment or maybe he was at work. He started off in cable maintenance with our missile program, and then eventually went into commissary services, where he basically got people's food and the things that they needed just for one of their basic needs. And so for my dad to be at my side and to be able to be such a leader and such a presence in my life was paramount in building my foundation. Um, One thing about being in Cheyenne, Wyoming, is that's where I started my education. I was in preschool and kindergarten, and I started with Department of Defense schools, which I was so blessed to get that foundation. At the time when I was starting school, um, there wasn't the arguments of today, fortunately for me. So there wasn't an argument about what to teach. We got the basics, and we got the real history of our country. And since it was the Department of Defense, they had no problem talking about not only military teaching, but also they knew that there was a Christian presence, and that our country was founded on Christian principles. After spending 2 years in Cheyenne, my family and my dad received orders to go on to his next base, which wasn't too far away. We were assigned to Malmstrom Air Force Base near Great Falls, Montana. And when we arrived there, we packed up our stuff, to leave Wyoming, and we just drove a quick short distance to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and we were back amongst family again. When we were in the Philippines, and when we were in Wyoming, all the rest of my mom's family were all in Montana, and my dad's family were all back east, back in Virginia. But at least when we came back to Montana, we actually were back, stateside. Also, we were there amongst our family, and so I got to really know my grandparents on my mom's side, my grandma and grandpa, and I had some aunts and uncles that also lived in Montana. And from there, I learned what the whole value of home is. When I say I am home, I knew that Montana was my home. Today, I live in Boise, Idaho, and I've lived here since '91. I've been here over 30 years. But I still, when I drive to Montana to either just go back and see friends, or some family that still lives there, I start to get this feeling or this presence that I'm actually home. So I learned the value and importance of home, and also homemade. It was important for me to, for my mom to cook homemade meals. And I had homemade Halloween costumes. 3 times I was a clown. And I'm a pretty tall person. I'm about 6'6", and so my costume seemed to get bigger every time that I would, go through the years. And later I learned, in life, that pizza and beer at home tastes a lot better than if I have like Pizza Hut pizza, where you have to, gather up all your stuff and leave. When you're at home, to have that homemade feeling. something that I learned, even though we did spend a lot of time at home, we went out a couple times for treats. We would go out and maybe get a meal or something. But one time, mom and dad took me to McDonald's, and from this story, I'm going to quick share with you. I learned about empathy, and my parents took the opportunity to really allow me to, or to show me the right way to feel empathy for somebody else. And we happened to be sitting there, enjoying our burger or whatever from McDonald's, and um, the wind, somebody opened the door and the wind picked up and it blew this old gentleman's, food over, and it knocked over his milk and it spilled onto his fries. And I just got this feeling of just horror. And as I'm telling the story, I can almost feel those feelings come rushing back to me. And I remember when that man was just sitting there and he was just kind of mad, and all I wanted to do was grab my milk and just walk over to that old gentleman and just say, here, you can have my milk. And that's when McDonald's Happy Meal actually did have good prizes in it. And I remember the Muppets Take Manhattan was the movie, and I actually got a Muppets glass, and it was a real glass made out of glass. It wasn't this plastic,
Made of
from
glass,
the
an
PS3.
actual glass. That's amazing.
Exactly. And it had weight to it, and you could actually put things in it, and it would contain it, and it was great, So, but like I say, friends, I did learn empathy from that experience, and I learned how to feel. And when we were all done, my mom and dad came to me and they said, son, that was nice of you to offer your milk to that stranger and to try and make him feel better, And he got such a look, immediately as soon as I came over and he saw me handing that milk to him, he kind of immediately, that you could just feel his anger, subside, and he was like, thanks, but no thanks. You keep your milk, and but I did learn empathy and how to feel for other people, and how their feelings were more important than mine, and just a little bit of loss of my milk wasn't going to be that big of a deal. So that was part of my story, when my early development, when it came to feelings for other people. But one of the rewards of being in Malmstrom is we had an airstrip there, and I discovered my love of airplanes. My dad was in no short supply of trying to help develop that in my life. The Blue Angels had flown into town, and this was before the F-18s that they fly now, but they were flying the A4, and all the pilots came. And what happens before an air show is one pilot will come and kind of scout the area. Well, my dad knew that I loved airplanes. He's like, well, let's go, son. I'm going to take you with me, and we're going to go meet that pilot. And I was like, what? How do you do that? And he's like, well, we'll figure it out. And that was my dad's mantra. Is he would always say, we'll figure it out. If he would put his mind to something, he just said, we'll figure it out. And that was something else that I learned, as a Catholic gentleman, as a young child. I mean, I could count on my parents that if, even though we had the thing of figure it out, because we were sometimes in the very perilous situations, but my dad would always say, we'll figure it out, son. And I was like, man, that's great, Dad. And sure enough, we got to there, and he had talked to one of the crew chiefs that was on the flight line, and we got to meet the Blue Angel pilot before even the show day. And from that day forward, I have had just a love of airplanes, and just seeing him that day. And we went out for the air show, and when we saw that pilot again, he said, I remember you. You came up and said hi to me earlier. And it just was really profound how it developed that. So another impactful thing that happened to me when we were in Montana was on May 18th of 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. That's the big volcano. And throughout my story, friends, you're going to hear about May 18th. May 18th has become a very mysterious but a mystical day in my life. A lot of things have happened to me that have been maybe not directly impacting me, but throughout my story, I'll bring up May 18th, and this is the first encounter of me in May 18th, and I'll never forget. It was that May 18th was springtime, but it was like we woke up and there was snow on the ground, but it wasn't snow, it was ash, from Mount St. Helens. And so for me, I'll never forget that day when Mount St. Helens erupted. And continuing on in my spiritual and my theological walk in Malmstrom, I made my first Holy Communion, and I made my first reconciliation. And it was so important for me to receive those two sacraments. And there was actually a sister, or a nun, that actually came, and she taught my first communion class and my first reconciliation, and really helped us to learn, and laid such a very strong foundation for me, to where I still look back to that day when she said, when you received your first Holy Communion, it's not just like you're receiving a treat. It's not a reward. This is the body and blood of Christ. And she made it very clear to me what it is I was receiving that day. Also, when it came to my reconciliation, she says, you need to have your soul, and your heart clear, so that when you're spending time with Jesus, you have nothing that are blocking him. And my parents, once again, there was no shortage of them of them helping me to reinforce my sacraments and my Catholicism even at home. So after making a good confession, I think it was in preparation for Easter or something, it might have been during Holy Week, I had made a good confession. Mom and dad were like, great, let's celebrate by having a game night. We had a great game night, and for me, I had a winning spirit. Mom and dad always taught me to do my best and to win, but not to win at all costs. But that night, I felt really that I should win at all costs, and I cheated. And I cheated at the board game, and I didn't even really feel bad about it. I just did it. Well, they caught me in my cheating. They caught me in my lie. And mom said to me, or dad said to me just directly, Corey, you know what you've done here? You've done something wrong. You just went to reconciliation last night. And now you've darkened your soul, your heart. Now your heart has a little shadow on it. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I did that because I wanted to win. And they said, well, but you don't win at all costs. You don't win at the expense of hurting somebody else or cheating. And mom and dad marched me back down to reconciliation the next night and made me go through it again. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I have to go again. I had to go and sit. That same priest, he goes, oh, back so soon? I said, well, yeah, he said, well, what's your confession? And I said, well, bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I cheated playing a board game. And he took it very seriously, and he says, well, it's good to have you back. I'm glad that you recognize that you made a mistake, and you come to reconciliation as often as you need to. And I said, well, thank you for that. And there was many times in my life. I mean, I'll never forget. I went shopping with mom. One of the first times I went shopping with mom, it was outside of the Air Force Base. We were out, and in the commissary on the Air Force Base, everything is right there. You have your aisles of snacks and whatever, and there's not really those impulse buy stations.
Yeah.
Well, we were in like I don't know what kind of a store it was, like an IGA or something, and there was these packs of bubble gum, and I was like, well, I'd like one of those. Why? I didn't want to have to pay for it, so I just took it and stuck it in my pocket. Well, when mom sees me in the car, she sees me reach into my pocket for that. She turned that car around and she made me go talk to that store manager, and not only did I have to pay for the gum, but I had to give it to him and he had to keep it. So I lost my money and I didn't get to keep what I had taken. So, mom and dad impressed upon me very, very early in life the value of being honest and honesty, and that if I do make a mistake, that there is reconciliation and there's a way to reconcile my mistakes, and not only reconcile with the people that are around me, but to realize that there is, forgiveness even from the church, and that is also to not hold on to grudges. There were times where, I felt like maybe a kid was mean to me or somebody was not nice, and I was holding this grudge against them. And mom said, you've got to forgive them. And that was something I'm like, forgiveness, they're mean to me and they're making fun of me. And they're like, no, you have to forgive them. And I have something else coming up in my story. I'll share with that as well. Something else in Montana is it wasn't all about, church and serious things. We actually had fun. And my mom and dad introduced me to my forever love of country music, and it's still my favorite genre. And mom and dad signed up for country swing dance lessons, and they took me along for the ride.
Okay.
I was actually I was a taller kid, and so they brought me along, and the teacher was a shorter gal. And coincidental as it was, I was tall enough, even when I was in those early grades, that I could actually dance with the dance instructor. And so while all the couples were dancing, of course the dance instructor didn't have anybody to dance with, and most couples at the time didn't, bring their kids with them. But I was well behaved, and so she danced with me, and I got to learn that night, that I was to be included in this family, and how family was so important to me. So, and I grew up knowing that my parents loved each other. I saw the look in their eyes. My dad would hold my mom and look at her right in her eyes and say, honey, I love you. And they would dance, and that was their expression, outside of, even outside of just, our home or whatever. But in public, he had no problem, showing me how important it was to show your love and support for not only your wife, but, he had me as his son there, and he showed that that was important as well. So the 3 years in Great Falls went by really fast, and we had to make the hard decision to be transferred again. And this time it wasn't going to be a small transfer, and it was very difficult. I had, mom and dad had always made sure to have play dates set up for me or whatever, but I had to say goodbye to a lot of those people, including family, because we were going to be packing up this time. We were going to be packing up and going abroad. My dad had received orders with commissary services with the Air Force to go to Rhein-Main, Germany, near Frankfurt, near the big Flughafen there, the big airport. And my family, I was old enough then. We went to Germany when I was 8 years old, and we were there 3 years. And so about when I was turning 11 is when we were coming home. But I learned, and my parents explained to me that we were going to be leaving the United States, but we were going to be on the Air Force base, and it was going to be safe, and I shouldn't be scared. And they made it they explained it to me, not like an adult, but they explained it on my level, that it was going to be okay, and that even though we were going away from family and friends that we knew, we could stay in touch with them over writing letters, or we could definitely reach out to them and share experiences. And since we were going to Europe, which was a place that a lot of people like to visit, we could have them over. So, and to come visit us in Germany. And I'll tell you guys, I'll tell you friends, the one thing that I learned about moving to Germany was keep it simple, pack light, and what the bare necessities of life are. And I'll be very honest with you, that is something that I have carried in my life all through my life. I'm 48 years old today, and for me, I still keep it very simple. My room has a bookshelf with a few books on it. I got my bed and a couple things, but really, I don't pack a lot of things that aren't necessary. I just find that it's heavy. And when we were going over to Germany, we had to fit everything into a small shipping container. And my mom and dad and I were each permitted 2 suitcases and one extra bag. It's kind of like traveling, today on the airplane.
Yeah.
And but all the rest of our household goods had to fit into a small shipping container, and we got to watch our stuff, get shipped away on a truck, and it got on a boat, and we didn't see it for a long time. But and then we got on an airplane. We ended up driving all the way across the United States from Montana all the way to the East Coast to Bremerton, or sorry, to Andrews Air Force Base on the East Coast, and we got to see my dad's family for the first time in a long time. And we had a big celebration for us, and they made us a cake that said Auf Wiedersehen on it because we were off to Germany. And within 3 or 4 days, we were in an airplane. And for me, I had been on airplanes before, traveling back and forth to the East Coast to see my family, but I hadn't been on that long of a flight where we ended up traveling through the night. And when we got to Germany the next day, we were in Germany. So we arrived in September, and we lived out of those suitcases for almost 6 or 8 months. We ended up living in a hotel, the base hotel. And we were waiting for base housing, and then something very profound happened. Something that I look back on today that I think really laid our experience of Germany, for the better. And we ended up not taking base housing, which would have been living just like in a little bit of America, but still in Germany. But we ended up living on the economy. We lived in a high rise and like probably a little bit bigger than an apartment. It had 3 bedrooms, and we just lived out there among the German people, and they embraced us just like we were not foreigners at all. We're very welcome there, and we got to enjoy those many years, with the Oktoberfests and having that German community and that German hospitality.
How many years? You say many years. How many?
We were there for 3 years. Yep. We lived in Germany for 3 years. We got there in 82, and we left in 85. And for us, it was just wonderful, and to be able to see German youth and to see another side of how a young person can grow up, and to see that our values in America, even though we were a whole ocean away, they were similar. And so yeah, we lived in a high rise in Waldorf, which is a little village near Frankfurt, and it was just a little piece of, I guess, paradise, because we were so not really fearful, but we were just uncertain of what was going to happen, and how they welcomed us was just great. I mentioned at the very beginning of my story how I was born into a lot of love. Well, as soon as we arrived in Germany, my mom and I caught like a bacterial infection, because it's a different environment there. So for us, we ended up catching probably like a bronchial infection, and we both had to get penicillin shots. My dad, he didn't seem to catch it. I don't know if he just got all of his inoculations with the Air Force or what, but Mom and I were down for a couple of weeks while we were fighting off this bacterial infection. But together, we fought it off, and we ended up moving into our high rise, and I got registered for school there on the Air Force Base, and off we went with our life. Well, wouldn't you know it, probably not even a month, or probably less than a month that we were in there, I had somebody come into my life that I would consider to be a saint. and her name was Frau Krischka. Frau Krischka was a widow, and she was an across the hall neighbor for me and and she took our family in just like we were her own kids. She treated me like her grandchild. She treated my mom and dad like her daughter and her son. And she taught us what it really means to live in a German environment. Frau Krischka was very genuine. She was very honest and very open with who she was. She would open up her home to us anytime. She saw us coming on the elevator, and she would look at the people and say, "Oh, there's the Newell family." And she called me Carrie. Instead of my first name is Corey, but she would call me Carrie. And she always wanted to bake something for us. And one time she came out and said, "I want to bake you into a cake." That was one of the funny things that we had. She made us this cake. And one thing about the sweets that are in Germany is they don't have a lot of sugar in them. But she knew that we would kind of need some transition between American sugar and the German one. So she would put a little extra sugar in it just for us. And then she eventually would make us like cakes. But she was very, very faithful in her faith. She wasn't Catholic, but she was, whatever religion she was Christian. She was Christian, and she every time a holiday would come along, she would help us to build like an Advent wreath. And one thing that she did is she taught me how to speak German. And I don't know if you can see this book, but this book that I'm holding up now is the book that she taught me how to speak German from. I still have it. And I was in Germany when I was 8 years old. I'm 48 now. That was 40 years ago. I still have this book. And she taught.
I don't know German, so what is it?
Yeah, basically what it says is the Hasenschule, which means the rabbit school. And so basically what this book taught was basically the rabbit school. But all throughout the book, I mean, it has like prayer time. I'm looking through the book, like, I don't know if you can see this page right here, but you can see all the rabbits are praying.
Yeah.
And if you were to try and find a book today that has even kids praying in it, you'd have a hard time finding that. So she actually tried to teach me about the German culture and about the German language, right from a book, and I still have it today. And I think
I would joke and say, if you ever wanted to sell it, which you wouldn't, because I can tell you're very sentimental, but if you wanted to sell that would go for over $1,000.
Oh, I'm sure I could probably pay down the mortgage on my house, with some of that book. But she was just so embracing. She embraced us as a family, and she just embraced us as almost like a grandchild, like I said before. Once again, when we were in Germany, we met some forever friends. We still have Bob and Diane Miller. They ended up having a kid there named Dirk. Dirk is a German name. And Melissa was already born when they were there. And then after we left Germany, they were still there, but they had another young child. I think her name was Annette or something like that. And so, but yeah, so we met some other forever friends. And then Charlie and Annette Diggs, we met them as well. And we're still friends with them. So certainly within the military family, even though they were living in our apartment complex, we still are forever friends. So, but coming, I've been talking about how positive things were. Well, things weren't always positive in Germany. We weren't even there a year. And one time we were out, I'm not sure what we were doing. We were visiting friends or something, but we ended up getting into a car accident with a German citizen. My parents had, insurance and everything. We were covered, but of course, anytime there's an accident in Germany, they're always going to blame the American if the American is involved. And we did get blamed. And we ended up having not only to pay for her car, but our car, we had to get parts from the United States. And so we were without a car for almost 8 months. And I'll tell you, we learned about the power of the bicycle and the power of our own feet. And we ended up walking a lot, and not only in our own community. We ended up buying another car for Dad. It was a Audi that had German specifications on it, so he could actually have a car to get to work. But Mom and I would walk the back path. It was about a mile from our little village to the back gate of the base, and we'd meet Dad sometimes for lunch. And so that was perseverance, friends. That was one thing that my family and my mom and dad taught me, was to persevere. Yes, we were in this accident. Yes, we were without our car, but we're going to find a way to, make it through this. And we felt very much away from home. We were isolated. We encountered the German police, the Polizei, but they were very kind to us because we were honest. We didn't try and hide. We didn't try and run after the accident. We said this happened. We know this happened, and sure enough, we got through it, and we ended up getting our car fixed, and we were able to be back on the road and get things back together. But probably after we got everything fixed with the car, not it was winter time coming up, and I ended up getting strep throat. And so kids get sick, right? So for me, I ended up getting strep throat. Well, my strep throat progressed into a staph infection, and the staph infection worked its way down my body and into my legs, and it settled into my legs, and I lost the ability to walk. It was a very dark time for me as a kid. What do kids do? They like to be able to walk around. They like to be able to play. Well, I could do neither. And my parents didn't know what to do. We're in a foreign country. I mean, yes, we do have American hospitals that are there with Army hospitals, but still getting to them, So we went to the emergency room, and they immediately said, "No, we don't know what's up with this kid. He's got to go to Wiesbaden, which is the American or the Army hospital over there, where I don't know if you guys have seen like some of the, the people that get released from like prisons and that sort of thing, that they'll go through Wiesbaden, or even some, the things that were happening in Afghanistan. Some of our allies were taken to Wiesbaden for examination. Well, I was sent to Wiesbaden. Well, the thing is they didn't transport me by ambulance or whatever. They just kind of gave us a map and said, "Here's where Wiesbaden is. Here's where we are. Good luck. They're expecting you, and it'll take you about an hour to get there." Well, my parents got turned around a little bit, and I remember we had to follow these two guys who were on motorcycles. We ended up going to a gas station, and these two guardian angels came up and said, "Oh, we know how to get there. Just follow us." And they literally lit the way with their BMW motorcycles, and they got us to the Wiesbaden hospital, and they admitted me that night. And I was in the hospital for probably about 2 weeks, and I ended up having this reaction, but because I was in isolation, they didn't quite know what it was, and they didn't really understand staph and that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
but my mom stood next to me the whole time, and she said, "You're my son." And this was the first time, guys, that my friends, this was the time when my mom totally embraced the Blessed Virgin Mary, and she said, "This is my son, and I'm not going to leave my son. That's me." And every day, because my dad had the car, she would just walk to the base, and then she would catch the bus there at Rhein-Main, and she would ride the bus all the way to Wiesbaden every single day. She would ride the bus, and she would come and sit with me and play games with me and help and comfort me. And every day I look forward to it. As soon as visiting hours opened up, my mom was right there. And that was very profound for me, because I knew that the power of presence and my healing was because of her, and coming every day to say, "I'm here, son. I'm here for you. I'm not going to leave your side. I'm not just going to leave you in the hospital and come just on the weekends when it's convenient for dad and I. I'm coming right now." And she did. And I healed, and I didn't have any adverse effects. My balance is still okay today, and I didn't have to relearn how to walk or anything. It just, once the staph infection was healed and they got the right antibiotics in me, I recovered. And I really put a lot of that on my mom, and I'm more than certain that she was praying for me, and just her presence and that motherly love that healed me that day.
You were 10 at that time? Is that right?
I was 10 years old. Yes, I was 10 years old when that happened. And yeah, it was certainly something that yeah, it certainly was something that will I'll never forget. So just kind of moving on, just to kind of share a little bit more about some of my foundational time after Germany. We made the most of our time in Germany. The whole thing with with our time there, we actually visited a lot of World War II sites, Bavaria and Holland. We got to see, where Anne Frank, was the attic that was there in Holland and Netherlands. We got to, we spent time there. We went through Checkpoint Charlie, and I got to see East Berlin, and I got to see the true gray and oppression and the confined sadness like I had never seen it before. And the whole idea of, a staycation was not in our vocabulary when we were in Germany. We got to celebrate Easter Mass in St. Peter's Basilica with the future saint, John Paul II. Our vacations were busy, and we were on the move. When I was in Germany, I did learn about what it means for friendship. Just to quick summarize what that is. I learned what a friend is: someone who you can trust and respect without reservation or second guessing. I had a friend, his name was Kevin, but I learned that sometimes even friends can turn on you, to kind of show his I guess, his popularity amongst others, he pushed me into a pit and he called me names and demoralized me in front of other classmates. And this is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about forgiveness. And another friend, he planted some Play-Doh in my desk. The kids were, causing trouble, and they were throwing Play-Doh around in the restroom. But he took one of the cans and he put it in my desk, and it made it look like it was me. But because I had learned about the power of forgiveness, I forgave those two boys, and I don't ever see them anymore. They're not our friends, but I did learn about forgiveness. We departed Germany in August of 1985. I was 10 years old, and our departing, I guess, actions or whatever were the fact that our base got bombed. We ended up having a car bomb that was parked next to the headquarters building at Rhine Mine, and the three of us were pulled together. We were staying in the temporary living quarters, the TLQ. And after that happened, we were definitely ready to get back to the United States. So coming back stateside, we moved to Mountain Home Air Force Base, and I will be honest with you, friends, that Mountain Home Air Force Base is the biggest lie in the Air Force. After living in Germany and seeing the Alps and seeing all the big mountains there, coming to Mountain Home, Idaho, Mountain Home is a high desert. There isn't a mountain to be found. The closest mountains are 30 or 40 miles away. So for me, we came to Mountain Home, Idaho, and I spent 5 years there. This was the time between 85 and 1990. And in Mountain Home is when I got my first job as a rent-a-kid. I mowed lawns and babysat, and I helped people to move. And I was so proud. My first year with my first job, I earned $164, and I really felt that I was onto something when it came to be able to take care of myself and sustain myself with a job. I was confirmed in the Catholic Church in Mountain Home, and I chose St. Francis of Assisi as my personal patron saint, due in part for his love of animals, which I loved. And then later in life, because of his perception of peace and how important it was to have peace in your life. Even today, you'll find, friends, that when I greet you, I will often say, and I think even Eddie, I hope I've said this to you as well, but peace be with you. And I'll extend my hand in peace. It may not be in Mass time, but I extend my hand in peace to those that I meet. Up to this point in my life, I had been going to Department of Defense schools, as I mentioned before, but starting my sophomore year of high school, I was integrated with the town kids, and I had to kind of learn how to build relationships. It was so easy because mom and dad would just set me up with other kids, or it was just, we always had that common ground of having other, other kids that were just the same as me. We knew we would move into a base. We were there for 3 to 5 years, and then we'd move again, no problem. Well, these kids had known each other since they were just little kids. They had been together, for 12, 13, 14, 15 years. Well, for me, they were all new. And being able to realize that all relationships all relationships are important, and you have to learn to build them quickly. And being in the military, I did learn to build relationships quickly. I have a sort of a platform that I build my relationships with. I have an introduction. Anybody I meet for the first time, I introduce myself. Hi, I'm Corey, and I immediately start looking for mutual connections. I identify interests that we share together, and I communicate honestly and openly with anybody who I meet. And I follow up with that person, and that's my mantra, friends. That's one thing. When for other maybe other people that are listening today that might be, military kids, or that might be involved with, maybe their parents move a lot. Maybe their dad is a salesman or in some sort of profession that a lot of moving. It can be done. You can build those relationships, and you have to realize that maybe those relationships aren't going to always be one-on-one, or you may not be openly present to them. But one thing that I found was that if I followed that same process, that my relationship may not last beyond me getting transferred. But even back then, when I didn't have the internet, I didn't have email, I didn't have cell phones or social media, we just exchanged addresses, and then we started writing letters. And then as I got older in life, and there was the internet and email and cell phones and social media, I used those different avenues to stay in touch, and how important it is to communicate. Like even with Eddie and I, Eddie, we stay in touch, and I try and speak to you and spend time with you more than just, a quick blurb, or just kind of check in, say, hey, how you doing? Or, it's important to maintain that. And I found that that was a way for me to remain connected and remain grounded. And I can remember I had a good friend, his name was Brian, and we lost contact, because he ended up joining the military and he got married and deployed somewhere to Europe. But he never really did we didn't stay in touch after that, and I lost track of him. And it's kind of one of the dark sides of it. But I built other friendships, and I learned that even with that loss, I still can pray for him every day. The power of prayer is how we stay connected. For one of my school projects, I interviewed my uncle Bruce. He's my dad's oldest brother. He was a naval aviator, and from that interview, I learned about what it means to be in the military, and I learned about how I someday wanted to fly airplanes, and then my love of airplanes um, sort of led to a future, and it was a foreshadowing of being able to, to fly one day. So um, then, of course, the Lord, he always has to challenge you. You can't just leave you comfortable to sit there. So it's my senior year of high school, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm in Mountain Home. I'm ready to get to school, and all of a sudden, Dad comes home one day and says, "I got orders to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson." And I'm like, "What? Dad, it's my senior year of high school. All my friends, what's going to happen?" He says, "Well, Corey, you know how to do it. You've done it all these other times. You're going to have to pull up your roots one more time, and we're going to plant again." Well, something that we found when we went to Tucson is you don't stick a senior in high school just in the high schools in Tucson, Arizona, and expect him to thrive and subsist. It's a very cliquish area, and it's the area there is very dominated by who you know and what relationships you have. And through the power of prayer, once again, and through the relationships I had with previous teachers, one of the schools we found there was a parochial school, a Catholic school called Sal Point. And Mom and Dad said, "We're going to get my son into this." They said, "Well, we don't accept seniors." And they said, everybody has to start on the base level as a freshman. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Well, sure enough, they said, "Well, just write get a few letters of recommendation, and you may have to take some extra classes." Well, sure enough, I with the grace of God, I was able to go through, and I graduated high school. And here's that magic, or that mysterious day again. May 18th, 1991, I graduated high school from Sal Point with a 3.2 average, and I made it, and I was ready to go. One of the high points of that time at Sal Point was the men's retreat that they have there, and I learned about what it means to be a fraternity, and I learned what it means that when guys are saying "I'm there for you," that it really is "I'm there for you." My dad retired from the Air Force after 20 years. I graduated high school. I applied for universities and was accepted at Boise State University here in Boise. My dad got a job at Micron, and my mom just said, "I'm along for the ride." So we pulled up roots again. We just, before we went to Tucson, we were actually in Mountain Home, but we moved to Boise this time. And I didn't know what I was going to major in at Boise State, but I was like, okay, all I want to do is fly airplanes. So I started off with electrical engineering, and I struggled with math. Then I changed my major to computer science, and I still struggled with math. And I finally settled on the business department, and I was in computer information systems, and it benefited me throughout my working career. Sure enough, when I'm in college, as the story goes, I started to struggle with my faith. I failed to solicit support from my clergy or my parish at Boise State, and I was lured away. I was lured away by a social life, and I exited the Catholic Church, and I entered the Church of Christ, which is a Christian church. I was attracted to their ping pong table in their basement and their Friday night devotionals, and literally, friends, the Lord led me into the desert, and I was away from the Catholic Church for 5 years, from '95 to about 2000, and it was the best way for the Lord to show me that, well, if you don't appreciate what I have given you, then I'll take it away. And he did, but he didn't leave me alone, friends. I mean, in that time when I was out in the desert, not the literal desert, the spiritual desert, he was working on me. He taught me how to increase my prayer life and the power of prayer, and how important it is every day to thank God, to spend time in adoration, to worship him in prayer. And also he taught me about what the scriptures are and how those were a guide, how those were instructions, and how if I want to be able to change my life and base my life off of somebody, here is a book full of people of how to live my life. And through the scriptures, I learned. Also, for those 5 years that I was away, I spent time in Malibu, California, also in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Tallahassee, and Salt Lake, and also in Wyoming. Those 5 different places, the church sent me and a couple of people from the Church of Christ campus ministry, and we learned from the campus, the different retreats that we went on, about how to thrive as a Christian in that world of those days. But my time away from the Catholic Church crushed my parents, and they couldn't understand why. I mean, they had done everything for me. They loved me. They helped me with my education, and I was like, Mom and Dad, I'm not doing this because I hate you, or I don't want to spend time loving you. I'm doing this for me, to build my theological foundation, my spiritual foundation. And they just didn't understand. So I ended up having to move out of my mom and dad's house, and I moved into the dorms at Boise State. Eventually I dropped out of school and I moved out of the dorms. I moved in with a buddy of mine, Eric, who I'd met at the Biblical Studies Center with Churches of Christ. I got a job at ReCon, and I ended up finding these jobs that sustained me, but I just found that I was topping out. There wasn't anything more that I could do. And then what really hit home for me is I woke up one morning after a night out with a bunch of friends in college, old college friends, and I woke up on a couch, and I don't know how I got there. And the owner of the couch, or of the house, was preparing spaghetti for me, and I was like, how did I get here? And I was that was my bottom. It's like I've got to do something with my life. I need something that I can hang my hat on. And I just knew it was going to be, I got to finish college. So mom and dad invited me back home, and they said, we're going to get you straightened out. And I registered back for school, and they looked at my credits, and they said, well, we can put you on a 5-year plan. And my goal was to be graduated in 2002. And I ended up completing my degree and my credentials. I got a degree in computer information systems, and that was my worldly success. I made it through college, and I knew I was going to be able to find work. I got a job at Hewlett Packard doing work with the printers, and then I was like, but what about my faith? I mean, sure, I'm successful. I have a job now, but what about my faith? And I started looking for a way to get back into the Catholic Church. And I attended mass with mom and dad, but I was just there in just body. I wasn't even there in any kind of passion. I didn't love the body of Christ. And then I was like, oh, well, how can I love something that I know nothing about? Well, sure enough, the body of Christ beckoned me. And I all of a sudden had this yearning to share the body and blood of Christ with my brothers and sisters. And I knew one way I could do that physically was as a Eucharistic minister. And so I went to go sign up for training, and the pastor at Holy Apostles here in Meridian, Idaho, his name was Father Tim Ritchie. He said, well, you only have one way to get back into the Catholic Church, and you must decide. He says, you have to go through, go through the Eucharist, accept the Eucharist, and only the Catholic Church. You cannot be going back and forth with 2 separate houses of worship, only the Catholic Church. And my dad stepped in as the leader that he was and said, son, I'm going to go to returning Catholics with you. And he worked with me every day, and he learned about the Catholic Church too. Because he learned he was just kind of a cold Catholic. And so together we got fired up, and we ended up re-embracing the Catholic Church. I accepted full communion back in the Catholic Church, and I in 2000, I was back as a full member of the Catholic Church in communion. With that, I signed up at Boise State, and I served 2 different mission trips with Capstone Missions to Tijuana, Mexico. And that's where I learned that when you help someone out that is less fortunate than myself, I receive more than I give. The hospitality of the Hispanic people, they give and they serve us from their poverty. And that was something that is still stuck with me today, friends, is that I learned that it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how little skills, whatever, you can make a difference. And that's when I adopted that phrase when I say, I go out and I make a difference. Let's make a difference. And with that, I graduated from Boise State University in 2002. And with that came the greatest gift that I've ever received. The girl I was dating at the time, her name was Jessa. Her father bought me a membership into the Knights of Columbus and said, I'll pay for your first year membership. I'll mentor you, and I will take care of you as you are going through the Knights of Columbus. And he taught me, about the cleanup steps when it comes to the pancake breakfast and the fish fries. And he said, take on this job because nobody else wants it. And if they give you criticism, step aside and point and say, they'll show me how to do it then. And you'll find that, nobody else will criticize you after that. And that gift that he gave me was the greatest gift that I have received amongst others, but that one was the greatest. And I joined the Knights of Columbus because I needed a charitable outlay for my life. And I needed structure for my theological and spiritual life. And I needed to set myself up as a leader in my Catholic faith. And to do that, I just knew I needed a little bit of time. And I know that according to the scriptures, it says that a man shall leave his mother and his father and go out into the world and to join with his wife. and become one flesh. Well, I had a girlfriend at the time, but her and I were not working out. And I was like, okay, well, I just need to spend some time in solitude. So I got my own place and just started spending time just growing with all the lessons that I had compiled up to that point. I decided to go on a young adult retreat up at Bogus Basin, and went to reconciliation up there as part of the retreat. And when I emerged, I saw this lady sitting there, this young, my age, lady sitting there, and she was just had kind of a glow around her. And I told my other buddies that were there with me, I said, I'm going to marry her. And we courted for less than 6 months, and then she joined up with RCIA, and she received her first Holy Communion in Vatican Square, Italy. I actually took her there in celebration of completing her RCIA. And when we got back home, we got married on January 7th of 2006, and her name is Heather.
Wait, when did you said that she joined RCIA, right, like 6 months after you met her?
Yeah, no. She joined RCIA just as soon as we met. So like when we met at the retreat up at Bogus Basin, coincidentally, she had an opportunity right then to join up with RCIA. And then while we were courting, she was in RCA the whole time.
Got it. Okay.
Yep. And then so that when she came out of RCIA, then she received her full Holy Communion. She was actually a full Catholic then, because she knew that I wouldn't marry somebody who wasn't Catholic. And January 7th of 2006, we got married.
Got it.
But it wasn't without some issue, because Corey had myself. I'm speaking in the third person, but I had adopted some bad habits, and I thought for sure, I was 30 years old, and I was just going to be a white knight, and I was going to rescue her, and I was going to be the one that was going to make her life and our life together just one for the ages. And no one else knew what they were talking about when they would come up to me and said, Corey, this girl is a danger. She's been married before, and you need to kind of take it easy. And I said, no, I got this figured out. She's already gone through our RCIA. I said, everything's all lined up. I'm going to be fine. And, I threw all that caution that everybody kept giving me to the wind. And I said, no, I'm going to do this. And everyone else saw the relationship that I was getting into as a rebound, but I was blind. I was totally blinded by love or blinded by arrogance, whatever that was. I just entered into that marriage with the wrong intentions. And so we were married and we were going along, but things weren't getting any better. And then that September, the same year we got married, excuse me.
No problem.
September of that same year we got married in 2006, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And I was working on my marriage, my dad was battling cancer, and my mom was living her marriage vocation. And she never gave up on her spouse. And that's one thing that always fed me too, is I knew that my wife needed me, but I wasn't going to give up on her. But I what was I sacrificing? I mean, a relationship is supposed to be a give and take. It's supposed to be a united front. We're supposed to be Newell Incorporated. Heather and I were supposed to be united, and we couldn't have been more divided. My mom never left my dad's side. She sacrificed everything to comfort my dad, knowing that he was living in a death sentence. And he taught me what it meant, or she taught me what it meant for marriage for life. My marriage was a blur. I can't even really share with you guys today anything about my marriage other than the fact that it was deteriorating every day. We tried to save our marriage with possessions, with trips, with food and other fill-ins, but nothing sustained the marriage. We failed to spend time with anyone but ourselves. We didn't involve other healthy relationships. I mean, one way, especially those that are struggling with marriage, if I could give you any advice, spend time with those that have healthy marriages. I see amongst my friends, even yourself, Eddie, I see you and your wife as a strong marriage. I just think if I had taken my marriage and exposed it to someone such as like yours or other friends and family, or if I would have even invited my mom and dad into my marriage, I would have had a much stronger marriage, but I didn't. I just said, nope, I can handle this. And arrogantly, I lost the battle.
You married?
I was married little less than 7 years. And, family and our entire support structure was shut out. And then in September 21st of 2009, my dad died of pancreatic cancer. And unfortunately, with that death and with his funeral, incorporated one of my life's regrets. I have many regrets in life because I let sin get into my life. But the one thing that I did that day was I left my dad's funeral to go let the dog out. And I never said goodbye to my family and my friends who were all in attendance. Everybody showed up from both sides of the family. And I felt it so important to go and let that dog out that I didn't spend time with, my dad's only son, and I was not there to say goodbye. And I regret that today because my dad was present to me. He was so proud of me when I joined the Knights of Columbus because it was like, look, son, I wasn't the best father to you all the time, but I know with you joining the Knights of Columbus, that'll complete your training and that will make it so that you can become a leader and become a Catholic gentleman that I can be proud of. Ultimately, what ended up happening was Heather took full advantage of me and my situation, and she was given an ultimatum by her family, and her family and I never got along, and the ultimatum was pick Corey or pick us. And Heather went out and she ended up purchasing a home, and then when she invited me not to live there, I figured we may not last, and our marriage didn't last. My divorce ended up going final in November of 2012, but I made a clean break. We didn't have any children and there were no assets, and I ended up filing for divorce. And after that day in November, I never saw Heather again. It's been 9 years, and I don't know. I hear from other people, other mutual friends, that she's here in town, but I never see her. She never calls me. She doesn't tell me if our dog that we had, his name was Sam, if he lived, is dead. I don't know. But that break is something that is a shadow on my life that I'll probably end up having to live with the rest of my life. And it caused a degree of anger that I thought I wouldn't heal from. But my mom decided to take me in again. And my dad was gone, and she says, once again, son, I'm going to take you in, and I'll just have you come and stay, here through the holidays until you stabilize. And even though she said just a few months, well, that was 9 years ago, and I'm still here with my mom. Her and I are roommates, and we have the best relationship. She's my stage manager now. She helps me to make things possible when I'm serving in the Knights of Columbus. She helps me to take care of things when it comes to my job. And my mom did tell me, I told you so. I told you that Heather was going to be bad for you. But the thing is she softened it with a hug and kind words and a kiss. And my mom coined the phrase, I don't care how big or what the mistake was that you committed, as long as you learn from it. The Knights of Columbus and family camp, my church and my faith saved me physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually after my divorce. I found faith and foundation in family at family camp because I saw families that work together. I saw them work through challenges, and I saw them love one another and work together as families should. I was able to put some of my anger aside because I found that going out and making a difference in somebody else's life, when you go out and change somebody else's life, you're rewarded literally threefold. And I began to heal. I worked together for the betterment of the community. People at family camp sat down with me and said, Corey, tell me what's going on. And they listened to what I had to say. They listened to what I was feeling, and they were present to me. The top three things that I required for comfort and healing was someone to sit down, someone to listen, and to someone to be present to me. I now serve as a district deputy in the Knights of Columbus, which is leadership. I've been able to apply those leadership training to my career life as well. In my job, I'm a lead within my department, and I'm able to make a difference with others and build those relationships and sustain them. The Knights of Columbus has opened up doors for me to improve my performance as a business leader. I'm a Catholic gentleman with a mission and a vision to get people to heaven, and God has rewarded me with 2 goddaughters. I don't have any children of my own, but I do have a goddaughter up in Spokane. Her name is Philomena, and I have another one here in Nampa. That is, her name is Josephine, and I'm blessed to be their godfather, and my goal is to get those 2 little girls to heaven.
Wow.
Someday. Right now, just to conclude my story, gentlemen and friends, and Eddie, I'm adjusting to a new career life, working from home. I'm an extrovert socialite, and I need to be around others in community. And I find myself booking time and scheduling activities where I can be with Catholics and non-Catholics alike. And brothers and sisters, I'm a work in progress.
Wow, Corey. Yeah. You could not have been more honest. And what a memory. How do you go back and recall some of these things? I think that's a healthy thing that we could all learn from, is being able
I
to go back and see all of these lessons in childhood. I mean, obviously throughout life, but
Sure.
you,
Well, the one thing I did is I asked the Lord for that. I asked for those memories because they're foundational. And the thing is if I live through all that and how I got to today, if I don't look back on some of those things and learn from what it was and recall what they were, um, then what was the point of living it? What was the point of experiencing it? And if I'm going to go to others and try and help them or try and be present to them or try and get them to heaven, just like I said, part of my mission, and the only way I can ever share with them how to get there is if I say to them, here's how I did it, and I'm the best example. Because if I can go and read a book or I can go and find another example, but if I can use myself as an example, because then I can be present to them. And so the main thing was, is I asked the Lord for that charism, the charism of memory and the charism of being able to write things down. And when I start to write, the Lord just puts the words out of that pen. Or when I start to speak, the Lord just starts to put the words in my mouth. I don't speak. What you just heard from me for this last hour that I've been privileged to speak with you has been the Lord's words. Those aren't my words. That's not my speaking. I turn my life over, because when I try to govern my own life, when I try and take control very arrogantly, I failed. But when I turn it over to the Lord and I say, God, I am your mouth, I am your eyes, I am your hands, I am your feet, use me as you will, then things start to happen.
that's amazing. The other thing that I find fascinating is, this was a good exercise for me. I don't know when I did it, or if it was someone guiding me through it or what it was, but to go back in time and revisit some of those negative circumstances.
Yep.
And if you have this very visceral response and you're still angry at someone from 25 years ago, gotta forgive, gotta move on.
Amen.
No way that is going to help. So when you go back in time, or even in the moment, you said you were forgiving people.
Right.
That's so honest, so real, that a lot of us, you need to have that ability to open up and go back in time and forgive people
Thank
and
you.
move on. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. I do know what
Yeah.
you mean. And being able to kind of go through this exercise with myself, sometimes, Eddie, I didn't even realize what it was that I was angry at. What was I holding on to? And I started to think about those two instances where I was betrayed as a friend, to where somebody who I thought was a friend all of a sudden just pushes me into a ditch, and, it's like, well, that's not a friend. I mean, what did I miss? Well, did I put too much trust into it? Well, sometimes you probably hear this pattern where I keep blaming myself. Well, sometimes there is real evil in the world. There
Yeah.
is real ugliness in the world. And sometimes those people make those decisions. And there's nothing that I did. They're just acting that way because of their decision to just be that way. And then they had to find a target and they targeted me.
Yeah. And then to be open, in my case, this is really hard to go into, the times that you personally acted as a bully and caused someone to fall in a ditch. I mean, that's not what
Right.
happened, but
Sure.
you see my point. It's both things, where you are willing to introspect and figure out what you may have done in the journey, as well as, what kind of unforgiveness are you hanging on to. This is,
Absolutely.
as much as I want to say, wow, this is just a given, or this is, everyone's heard this a million times, people need to hear it constantly, that it's so important to do those things and go through those exercises. I do want to ask you before we go,
Sure.
and you inspired me with a few things you've said in the past. How is it post divorce? How have you kept your focus on living a chaste life, living I'm going to keep my thoughts pure, I'm going to keep my actions pure, because I know that as, a Catholic, not just a Catholic, just a Christian, that the world wants you to fail miserably in those areas. And I just was hoping you could speak to that just a little bit, because you've said a few things in the past that just, again, gave me, I don't know, just, it inspired me. So
Absolutely. Well, I'll be honest with you of what it is. First of all, I I realize that I'm going to be tempted. And I know that I'm going to end up with situations where I'll be in a situation that if I get in too deep, say I expose myself to a situation that I can't get myself out of, um, I don't even engage in those situations. Like I said to you when I was in my story, Eddie, that I'm a community person, that I am a socialite, that I surround myself with others. I do very few things one-on-one. And so in order to keep that chastity or to keep that chaste decision, if it is a lady, then I make sure that I'm in a very public area. I never put myself in an area where I would be tempted to go out of bounds, to put
Sure.
myself in an area where it's uncalled for. I would never be in her home alone. I would never be. I do have girls that are my friends that I do spend time with, but I'm never alone in a private area. That's my first thing that I do. The second thing that I do is, after acknowledging, especially that I am capable of falling because I've done it before and I will do it again, is of how I prepare for that. So it's like, well, if they do invite me over, say, well, yeah, let's just come over and have a couple of drinks and we'll watch a movie and everything will be fine. I'm like, no, how about we invite another couple over? Or maybe we can have some of our mutual friends. I always have I'm prepared. I'm organized. And I have a way out before I even get myself into that situation. And I realized how important my chastity is. And I know that even though I've gone through my marriage, and I did go through an annulment. I didn't mention that in my story, that I did exercise an annulment. And not because I wanted to go out and necessarily get remarried again, but I just wanted to, for my own self, for my own healing, which an annulment in the Catholic Church, I think, is one of the hardest things. I never felt more like the Catholic Church was after me or was attacking me than I
Sure.
did when I went through that annulment.
Because of
But
the length of it. Yeah.
yes, the length of it and the acknowledgement of the things that I did, because an annulment doesn't go in and look at your marriage. It looks at how you prepared for marriage, how you were courting. And then on that wedding day, what did you do? Well, you want to know, guys, what I did? I lied. I stood in front of God and everybody with my wife and I said, yes, everybody, we are open to life. And what did we do after that wedding day? We practiced contraception and we weren't open to life at all. We lied. We lied. I lied. She lied. And so when it comes to that chastity, that purity, Eddie, what I'm choosing to do is try and live a more pure life. I mentioned that I had gone to reconciliation just on this past Saturday
Yeah.
due to my anger because of how I respond to my own mother, who loves me. She comes out and all she wants to do is make a difference in my life. She wants to have me succeed. And what do? As I turn my anger towards her. She's the only one who's trying to make things right. And I victimize her. And so for me, when it comes to my purity and my chastity, I take my faith and I make it number one. I'm able to speak about my faith. I'm able to share about things. And the only way that I'm going to realize and remain pure is if I keep being honest with other people I come across. Don't hide. Don't put a mask on. Don't say, oh, well, I am that white knight, because I'm not. I'm not a black knight either, but I'm more of a gray knight. Maybe that's a better way to put it. I'm kind of right there in the middle. And for me, I maintain that chastity and that purity because of what I put first, not myself, but my faith and others, and making a difference in their life.
Yeah. And I asked about that because they're of the viewers that watch these episodes, they want to know these men that are um, single and chaste. They want to hear these stories. And Corey, God bless you. God
Thank
bless
you.
your honesty.
Thank you.
God bless the fact that you can. I don't know of anyone that can openly talk about so many aspects of their life without like trying to hide. Well, it wasn't quite that way. Let me dance around this or dance around that. You're super open. And I pray that other people hear the story, and the fact that what was so important in the beginning of the story is how you were talking about the ability to build quick relationships. That kind of stuck with me.
Yep.
Because it's that type of gift really that I think is needed in the church, especially now. And that's not because people are moving more than ever before. It's because there are issues with attention spans. There are issues with what people want to put priority on. There's not enough in the realm of friendship and in the realm of, and I think you mentioned this as well, in the realm of getting to know someone, even if they have the complete opposite opinions as you.
Exactly.
That, I don't know, there's something in there. People can take it however they want, but the quick relationships, taking time to say peace be with you. You don't know their life. When you meet new people, you don't know what the heck they're dealing with. You don't know what they voted for. You meet them, peace be with you, and maybe over time you form that relationship and you can help forge each other. And
absolutely. Well, the one thing I'll just add quick to that, Eddie, is the fact that if you do meet somebody who's almost, maybe even an absolute polar opposite of you, but if you build that relationship and they trust you and they know that even in your differences, you're not going to harm them, it's an opportunity for both of you to grow.
sure,
Then you can have an intelligent dialogue. I mean, you may absolutely differ on everything from faith to finances to government to politics to how you raise your kids. But if you can have an intelligent discussion, I challenge those discussions. Talk to one another, communicate openly and honestly. Tell someone how you really feel. And not because you're trying to belittle them and not because you're trying to break them down or convince them to join your side. I mean, I don't necessarily want everyone to join my side because you and I both know that my side sometimes isn't always right and theirs isn't either, but we have an opportunity to learn. That's why I engage those that may not be exactly like myself.
I just had one more thought. You know how you talked
Sure.
about your parents, marriage for life, right?
Yes.
You know, that attitude, that ability, you think that two people are exactly alike? No. Well, the people that can stick through all the difficulties, if that mantra, that attitude were to be applied to relationships, I'm not talking about those where someone's being abused, obviously.
Sure.
Those instances where you can actually tolerate, oh, that hurt, but I'm mature, I can get over that, we can talk through it. I just wish there was more of that attitude, the marriage for life, maybe a relationship for life or friendship for life that's not broken
Absolutely.
up.
Sure.
First time someone says something that's off-putting, or you tell a joke and, oh, that was not the right form, you're not my kind of friend. There's a lot there.
Amen.
There. Yeah.
Amen.
Anyway.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks again, Corey. Appreciate
Thank
your
you so much, Eddie. I appreciate you just giving me a platform to be able to visit with you today.
Yeah.
And this is a wonderful ministry that you have, and I thank you for providing that. It's a great opportunity.
Thanks, Corey. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and
Everyone,
and peace be with you.
Oh yeah, peace be with you, my brother, and peace be with everyone who is watching this episode or has watched this episode. So until next time, everyone, take care and God bless. Bye.
Amen.